Hello everyone. For social studies today, we're taking a closer look at immigration. We read about European immigration earlier in our online learning for social studies, but now we're going to read about the additional groups that have immigrated over to America a long time ago and continue to immigrate today. So the title of this article is Immigration, and this is a ReadWorks article. So this article you can find online if you were to go to ReadWorks and log in there. So here is a picture. There is no caption with it, but it's got real people in it. And based on just the picture and the title, I know that I'm going to be reading something that's nonfiction. I'm going to be on the lookout for factual information. The material that's in here is true. Before we get into the text, I want you to be on the lookout for a few things. So there are a few key words I want you to see if you can find while you're reading this article. The first set of keywords is European colonists. Keep that in mind. I also want you to keep West Africans in mind, as well as Chinese and Chinese Exclusion Act. And finally, third wave of immigration. So keep these keywords in mind because I am going to have you answer questions based on this article about immigration. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the article. Here's the first paragraph. It says, the United States of America has long been the world's chief receiving nation for immigrants. An immigrant is a person who leaves his or her country to settle and live in another country. Over the years, many millions of people have uprooted and left family and friends to move to America. Some felt forced to leave because they feared for their lives due to dangers present in their home countries. For example, many immigrants left countries that were at war or that didn't give them the freedom to practice their faith. Immigrants also left their native lands if they couldn't find work or enough food to live. Whatever the reason, immigrants usually have had to sacrifice a life that is familiar for one that is unknown. Here's the second paragraph. The United States was founded by immigrants. From the 1600s through 1775, European colonists settled in the land that is now the United States. Most of these immigrants were from England. Others arrived from France, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, and Spain. Many of these colonists came here looking for economic opportunity. They wanted better land to farm or better work. So people who came for economic opportunity, they were coming for a chance to make more money, have a better living. That's what they mean by economic opportunity. Others came to escape religious persecution. So some people left Europe because they weren't being treated right because of the religion that they believed in or followed. Some were even convicts brought over from English jails. So as a punishment, some Europeans were brought over to America. It wasn't something that they chose to do, but because they were criminals, they were brought over so that they could be out of their home country. The next part says West Africans also immigrated to the American colonies, but they came against their will. So this is the opposite of what happened with the majority of European colonists. European colonists chose to come to America. West Africans did not have a choice. They were captured, sold into slavery, and shipped to the colonies. Here's the next paragraph. Since the United States was established in the late 1700s, it has seen 3 waves of immigration. The first wave of American immigration took place from 1820 to 1870. So the first big group to come over to America happened during this time period. Over 7 million people made the voyage to America, mostly from Northern and Western Europe. About a third of these immigrants were Irish people trying to escape a famine that plagued Ireland in the mid-1840s. So during that time in Ireland, there was not enough food for everyone to eat. So a lot of people were coming over to America from Ireland so that they could have food that they could grow and eat so they could survive. Another third of the immigrants from this first wave were German. The Chinese also began to immigrate to America during this time. They got word of the gold rush in California. They came to work in the mines and get rich. So during the time of the gold rush, there were rumors that there was a lot of gold out in the western part of America, out in California. So people were trying to get out there so that they could get that gold and have more economic opportunity. They wanted to be rich. Here is the 4th paragraph. This flood of immigrants wasn't always welcome by those already in America. Some feared these newcomers would take away their jobs. Others didn't like the politics, customs, and/or religions the new immigrants brought with them. For example, many Irish people were discriminated against for being Roman Catholic. The Chinese also suffered greatly from discrimination. So the people who came over in this first wave, the Irish, the Germans, and the Chinese, they weren't always treated right by the European colonists that were already there in America. Some people didn't agree with the way that the Irish, the German, and the Chinese did things. They didn't always agree with what they believed in. And so they held that against them, and we're going to read more about what happened as a result of that discrimination. So in this 5th paragraph it says, the next wave of U.S. immigration was by far the greatest. It started in 1881 and ended in 1920. Over 23 million people immigrated to the United States during this period, most of whom came from Southern and Eastern Europe. By this time, anti-immigration sentiments had become so strong that a growing number of people demanded laws to make it harder for foreigners to become American citizens. So by the time this second wave of immigration happened, a lot of the people who were already living in America weren't happy about it. So there were people in America who immigrated from other places who were trying to stop new people from immigrating to America. In 1875, Congress passed its first immigration law intended to limit immigration. It kept people who were viewed as undesirable out, including convicts, so those are criminals. In 1882, Congress also passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. It prohibited Chinese workers from coming to the United States. So this act said that it was allowed to not let Chinese workers come to America. This was written in as a law by our government a long time ago. A few years later, other laws were passed. One required adult immigrants to have literacy skills. So there was a law that said you had to know how to read and write in order to come to America and be a citizen. Another law limited the number of immigrants from countries outside the Western Hemisphere. However, one of the greatest blows to immigration was the Great Depression of the 1930s. immigration sharply declined. In fact, there were more people leaving America than coming to America during this time. So during the Great Depression, that was a time when people were struggling financially. They didn't have a lot of money. It was hard to afford things. It was really a struggle to be here and live a decent life. So what ended up happening was a lot of people started leaving America during that time, during the 1930s, in the hopes of finding something better somewhere else. Here's the next paragraph. It says the third wave of immigration began in 1965 and continues today. Most immigrants in this wave have come from Asian countries as well as South American countries, Caribbean countries, and Mexico. A large number of these immigrants have settled in the East and Midwest. However, many others have moved to California. So a lot of the immigrants who've been coming over to our country most recently, they're choosing to live in the East where we are. They're also choosing to live in the Midwest, which includes places like Illinois and Iowa. And a lot of other people are choosing to move farther west out to California. Here's the final paragraph. Most immigrants have come to America with the hope of building a better life. However, they were sometimes met with hatred by the people already living in the country who feared the economic and cultural impacts of these newcomers. So the people who have already been living in America, they're afraid of how the new people coming in are going to affect the money that's flowing in the country, and also the way that things are done and the things that people value and what they believe. There are people who have been afraid that those things would change when new people come into America. While this discrimination and the economic downfall of the Great Depression had a negative effect on immigration, American immigration has managed to survive. So people are still coming from other countries, other continents, to live in America in the hope of building a life that's better than the one they had before. Thanks for listening. Now you're ready to work on the questions, and if you need any help with those, please let me know.